We will rotate down the table and end with Chen. Sorry. Our first question is about filling open positions within the school system. Many proposed solutions to the unfilled vacancies within Arlington County Schools incorporate finding money in the budget. What are your plans for tackling the persistent educator shortage? And if your solution involves increasing educator salaries, how does that solution impact the budget?
Yes, well, I think there's a number of different parts to this. First, what I keep hearing from teachers is that, I'm sorry, I'm gonna stand up because what teachers need is recognition, better compensation, and affordability is what it boils down to. So to recruit teachers, word of mouth is the most effective tool that we've had. We've been successful in recruiting some excellent teachers to the system because our pay's been at the top and because we have valued our teachers, but we need to do better there. We need to motivate our teachers. We need to give them the freedom and recognition that they deserve, reward growth, flip the way curriculums are designed. Right now, they're from top down. We need, as a school board member, I would definitely want to lead with our educators in the field and build curriculum from the ground up, not from side backs out. And also, again, leverage the great networks that we have in the area in terms of, and the academic sector that we have here as well, to reach out and recruit, starting with leveraging our own teachers to help us do that.
Okay. So teacher retention is a huge problem here in APS, but it's not just here in APS, it is a nationwide problem. And when you look at the cost of living here in Arlington, it is through the roof. So when we think about not just the retaining the teachers we have, but also attracting new teachers, we aren't competitive. And we aren't competitive because we don't pay the teachers what they deserve. We are not giving the steps and COLAs that they deserve. And we have not a lot of ways to attract them. We're not offering anything in terms of a housing like some of the other jurisdictions are doing. And that is incredibly problematic because that is the direct connection to our future learners. If we don't have the teachers staffed in these roles, we will not have the kind of leaders that we want graduating from APS.
So I can tell you that we are losing teachers. We're just hemorrhaging skill and experience because everything is overloaded at this point. Teachers are very stressed out. Paying them is one part of it. The other part of it is that we can stop doing stupid things. So one of the things that Fairfax does is they retain talent because they have a core of highly trained mentor teachers that will help make new teachers successful. What we need to do is to get those teachers into our classes so that they can see how well they will be supported, how well collaboration works in Arlington. It's not like Fairfax.
So there's two parts to this. One is recruiting teachers and one is retaining teachers. There are teachers from APS that are quitting at 28 and a half years. They get a significant bump at 30, but they're quitting. And it's not because of pay. Pay is really important, don't get me wrong, but there's other stuff too. They're being burned out. They're being asked to do too much. We have been cutting staff across the board and telling the teachers, okay, you have to pick up the slack. And that worked up to a point, and we are past that point. There are new federal rules, state regulations, changes in curriculum, and we're telling our teachers, it's your responsibility to go figure this out. When students come in and there aren't enough special ed teachers to support them, we're telling the main teachers, you go figure this out. It is your responsibility. And that is burning our teachers out, and we need to change it so that we are actually supporting our teachers. And from a financial standpoint, we could do things like, if you want to live in Arlington, you shouldn't have to pay property tax. We could do creative things that doesn't cost. Thank you.
Our next question is going to start with Kathleen. And this question is capital improvement projects in Arlington County. Arlington County is about to begin work on its capital improvement project, setting the slate for the next 10 years. What projects would you like to see prioritized?
That's a great question. So when you think about the capital improvement process, it needs to go hand in hand with our budget. Right now, we are spending about $70 million a year of operating expenses on our bonds. So when we think about the 10-year plan and we think about our current enrollment numbers, they're actually dropping. Our enrollment numbers have been dropping, and we have this huge bond debt that's part of these operating expenses that are now teachers are being asked basically to carry that load because we're not giving them the raises that they deserve with the COLAs. I would prioritize instruction over construction.
Well, Kathleen's right about the debt service. That is part of operating. However, construction is not. That's a separate thing. It's one bond funded. Now, the question is, what do we need to do to make sure what the county is doing is compatible with what we are receiving in the way of students? So we need coordination with them to understand what they intend to build out in order to make sure that we have school capacity in the right place and ready to receive students. So that's a coordination between the two bodies. I would just say that I was disappointed to hear the facilities, I'm sorry, Fiscal Affairs Advisory Committee chairperson opined that APS's budget was not clear and was not transparent. We got to fix that.
So just to correct something, our CIP funds is separate from the school budget, but the debt on those funds are part of the operating budget. We are one of the only school systems in the area where this is true. Everyone else is completely separate. And the trade-off is real. Because we're paying so much on school debt, and we are at our limit. We're not at our limit of borrowing, but we're at the limit of how much interest we're allowed to pay before we lose our AAA Moody's rating. So we are spending next year $67.3 million on just debt service. That would get us 700 teachers. That would, or 300 teachers, and pay our teachers properly, because right now we're paying our teachers less than half of the jurisdictions in the area. So we need to figure out, stop thinking like, oh, we're Arlington, we can afford everything, and just have this right-sized schools and fix the schools right now that are leaking water, that holes in the walls, and prioritize that over building brand new schools so that we can support our schools properly.
Thanks. Couple quick corrections. So the population projections for student population projections are actually going back up right now. They had gone down, they're going back up right now. Our teachers actually make roughly about the same in the area, less, in some cases less, in some cases a little bit more. We're all kind of in the ballpark, but we need to improve that. Teaching professionals still get paid about 23% less than their sort of peer counterparts in terms of abilities and experience in related fields. So we still need to work on teacher pay. We do need to align the CIP and operating budget. We need to reduce the bond debt, I think, and pay teachers with the interest in the savings. This was already, I'll double down on that. We need to better align how APS plans with the county. For example, better align our counterpart in APS to the county planner. And right now the CIP only considers budget, enrollment projections, guidance from Office of Academics, and capital project plans. But, and while school board is in the business of educating, not building, but building is going to be a part of our system. I want to provide vision and leadership to call that our operations have fair wages and environmental protections as core components and considerations of any upcoming project.
Candidates are allowed up to 3 rebuttals in 45 seconds each.
We don't pay our teachers the same as our neighbors. If you look at the average salary, we're very comparable to our neighbors, but that's because we have more tenured teachers than our neighbors. Arlington used to be where teachers come and we recruit from other school systems and they come to Arlington to retire, but they don't do that anymore. We pay our teachers on average about $4,000 less per year than our neighbors for the same step.
I'm sorry, I think during the introduction to the debate, I actually skipped over the rules for rebuttals. Okay. Yeah, no, all candidates are allowed up to 3 rebuttals for the debate, but there are 45 seconds in there. Sorry about skipping over that rule. I think I just got ahead of myself. So if any other candidates would like a rebuttal, you can use one now as well. If not, we can move on to the next question.
I mean, again, that's not half as much though. They don't get 50% of the pay. It's less, but 50%. Sorry, I misheard that.
All right, our next question is going to start with Mr. Fischthaler, and then we're going to go down the table this way. And this question is regarding student accessibility. Accessibility includes everything from learning materials to exit signs to administrative communications to students and faculty. What policies will you revise, eliminate, or institute to close the accessibility gap for all students?
Okay, so we do have, as I understand it, some physical accessibility problems, especially at some of our elementary schools. I'm not familiar with that, but that is an issue that can be looked into. I would do that. Accessibility in terms of materials that students use to learn. We have a lot of work to do on that. And that is because a lot of what happened in the COVID period was everything had to go online, and not everything had to go online. And not online is not what I consider the fullest extent of what you can do with a student. It's the interaction between a student and the teacher. The teacher gets to know what that student needs. I have 504 and various students with disabilities in my class. I learn how to work with them.
I think this goes back to our school construction, right? There's holes in our schools. There are physical limitations that prevent all of our students to have a proper education. And I know, are you asking about, so I'm not assuming you're asking about physical accessibility, but there's other accessibility issues in our schools. For our special ed kids, a lot of them are put in isolation on a tablet because there aren't enough teachers to properly teach them. That's an accessibility issue. We talk about the difference between equality and equity. Equality is giving everyone the same set of tools, and equity is giving each person the necessary tools for them to succeed. And that is part of the problem overall, or arching problem of accessibility, not just compliance, not just adding handrails in certain places and elevators that break, but actually thinking about the students and saying, this is what we need to do to make sure all our students are able to achieve.
Yeah, 3 quick things. First, in terms of, from a policy standpoint, as a school board member, I would want to take a look at the policies around, in case of drills and emergencies, there is a physical real threat there for kids who have special needs or have disabilities because they may be stuck. And we've had a couple of instances where kids have been potentially in dangerous situations because they have mobility issues. So we have to address those in schools, and we'll take a real deep look at that policy. In terms of academic accessibility, as mentioned, I think of my friend Anga, who teaches special ed, and he teaches out of a hallway. Another friend, also special education teacher, teaches in the hallway of a portable. Like, that should not be happening in Arlington County schools. So to me, those are very serious issues. Thank you.
So the 2 projects that we did in Fleet and the Heights, the construction on those projects, well, I shouldn't say the construction, the design was shameful. And it actually cost a lot of money to fix the egregious errors on those buildings. In Fleet, we took out an accessible elevator shaft because it was deemed too expensive. So now if you're a person with a disability that needs mobility, has mobility needs, you actually can't get from the parking garage without assistance, which is not legal. You should be able to take the regular elevator up. You cannot. At the Heights, we put the deaf and hard of hearing program in there, and we actually didn't have tested the audible levels in that building before we did it. And our kids in the Shriver program have to get wet doing a 6-ramp turn going into the building. It's not covered. We do a shameful job at the design for our students with disabilities.
Right. Our next question is going to start with Chen, and this is an audience question, and it relates to school resource officers. In 2020, Arlington County convened a working group that found that school resource officers were not advisable in Arlington County public schools. Furthermore, students of color and students with disabilities are at a significantly higher risk of disciplinary action than their white counterparts. What are your thoughts on the use of school resource officers in Arlington County?
We talk about budgets, and my question to people who want school resource officers or police officers in our schools is how many teachers are going to take away to have SROs in our schools? SROs are a hammer. They can only do one thing. They can only discipline. They can only scare. They cannot teach our kids how to read. They cannot teach our kids how to calm themselves. They can't teach our kids how to care for each other. Those are the things that teachers can do, and I'd rather have our resources dedicated to the teaching staff and the proper education for our children so that we don't need SROs. I know there are problems. I know people want a layer of security, and there are legitimate reasons to have more staff that can manage certain behaviors like fights and whatever else. But in the end, we need more teachers and less of other things.
Yeah. Well, first of all the data that we know of, so really looking at this from a data standpoint at the both local and federal level, unequivocally, SROs just add to the problem. SROs over-index in enforcing against Black and brown children. My platform is based on equity and respect and inclusion for all students, and SROs would go against that platform. So I don't believe we need SROs in schools, and I know this is a different view even from some fellow parents, from some fellow Latino parents, but the data is clear. I think we can all address questions around safety, which is one of the pillars of my campaign. If you look at my materials, I am deeply concerned and want to make sure that all our kids and teachers and staff feel safe in the building. But that is not the solution. There are, for the SSCs that are currently in school, I want to look at their training. I want to see how they're trained. I want to make sure that they are more trained in restorative justice practices that include peer mediation, that include counseling, that include other practices that are actually going to help our kids overcome the emotional challenges that they're facing and will actually help address the behavioral issues at the root and support county funding like in BIS for this too.
So when this work was being done in 2020, I was actually a leader within the special education PTA, and we were leaning into this work very heavily because we know our students with disabilities are disproportionately impacted with SROs and discipline. SROs are great for one thing and one thing only. They give the presence of control. They don't really stop altercations, and they weren't a big influencer and any kind of safety at the school itself. SROs are a hard stop for me. I'm all about student safety. I'm all about teacher safety. That comes from a culture and a community to ensure that we are setting up an inclusive culture where people feel safe and they feel welcome in our schools. It is not through arbitrary SRO enforcement that would disproportionately impact the same students that have the achievement gaps that we want in their seats. We're going to pull them out with the SROs. Absolutely not.
Being a teacher, and being in Wakefield, Washington, D.C., I think I have a bit of a different perspective on this. So I came in for a teacher who retired because she couldn't take the pressure anymore. second day I was there, she was still there. She was working the transition. That was the first day of the 3 lockdowns at Wakefield. One of our students had gone out and on a bad drug deal and encountered a gang and had rushed back into the school, and he was pursued by students with a gun. I think you need to go by school and examine what makes it safe. Wakefield, even if you ask the principal, he'll tell you it's not safe.
Our next question is going to start with Zariah, and it relates to parents and the school board. Recently, we have seen highly passionate discussions at school board meetings. As a school board member, you will be on the front line of these local education policy discussions. What tactics can you deploy to ensure that all opinions and mindsets, including those that you do not support, are heard in a positive and constructive way during these contentious discussions?
Sure. Well, first of all, to me, they're not tactics. It's who I am. I am an advocate for a living. So, and I do this for a living because it's who I am as a person. I believe deeply in service and in community engagement. So I come from with a respect and an empathy towards families, towards teachers, towards staff. I think that is sometimes something that at times is missing in government, right? That officials think that because they're elected, they know better. I do not. That is not how I roll. That is not who I am. So I will approach it from that perspective, and that I will always listen. I will always hear you and talk less. And the SROs is a good example. I would also add, for example, I know that from a budgetary standpoint, the police are strapped. Even if we wanted to wave a wand and say that SROs are back tomorrow, that can't happen because these officers have been redeployed. So in talking to my fellow Latino parents, I would have that discussion of let's get to the underlying issue of our collective concern for our kids' safety and well-being. That's where we're all aligned. How we get there, we can discuss how we get there through different solutions and then brainstorm, but we're starting with alignment, right? We're not adversaries. And I think too often officials see the public as an adversary. I would not. We are all one community.
So as the vice chair of the strategic plan steering committee currently, I could not have had a more diverse group that was handed to me. I have somebody that is literally that works for the Speaker of the House. So I did not think going into that room that we were going to be able to share values and align on things. What this experience has taught me is that we actually have a lot more in common, and that grounding is student success. So when we talk about collaboration and alignment and what that means to be a school board member, I represent the community, and the community is everybody that is in it. So I will listen. I may not always agree, that's okay, but I will listen and I will take note of what you're saying. And when we can find common ground, we will work together to ensure that our students have success.
Sitting on the school board, parents and other people in the community come and speak to us. We listen respectfully. My take on this is you listen carefully. Take notes. I've made a pledge that if you send me an email, you'll get a response in 48 hours. Sunday not coming. I take those things seriously because it's not what's on the surface. You have to look through the presentation, through the manner, to understand what is the concern underneath all that. Parents are very passionate about their children. That's right and proper. And we just have to listen, understand what their concern is, and respond to it.
So I was one of those parents complaining to the school board, raising my voice and about something that as a community we were very upset about. And we spent so much time discussing amongst ourselves how to handle the school board. We were strategizing, we were coming with ideas, we were writing talking points together. In the back of my head saying, this is exhausting. Can we just sit down for 30 minutes and talk it out? And the problem is by that time, it was too late. The trust was already lost. What I would do as school board members is reach out proactively with people early and often when there's not a problem, and find the groups that aren't always the loudest voices and talk about them, talk to them and see what their problems are so we can figure out solutions together and build a common language and trust so that when something happens that is going to adversely affect their children and does something they care about, there is a understanding and a trust so that we can work together towards solutions instead of having this adversarial, antagonistic relationship.
Our next question is going to start with Kathleen, and it pertains to preparing students beyond the classroom. Arlington's robust education system prepares students for learning beyond K-12 classrooms. However, a one-size-fits-all or college-focused approach isn't always the right answer for every student. How would you address the needs of students interested in exploring non-college career paths, such as skilled trades or military service?
So we have some amazing programs at the Arlington Career Center that help provide these alternative paths for students. I want to be really, I love the Career Center. My son is going to be attending there next year. But let me be really clear about one thing. That is, these programs, we have students in our system that cannot read. And they are in middle school and they are in high school, and they will be going through graduation potentially without basic literacy skills. And that is a huge problem. And I want to make sure that we are educating our students and giving them the choice of their careers, not us doing it for them, because we've determined that they cannot learn. Very big difference there.
Okay, as a teacher, I have had in my classes a number of students that go to the Career Center. Because I have a certain background in automotive engineering, some of them do that at the Career Center. As a method of connecting. It's very interesting, it's fun. They're having a good time. It's true that not everybody is ready for college. In the back there, that guy, my son at the Wyndham, did not go on to college. He went to the military, was very successful there. The other thing that I want to point out is that transitions, especially for special and students with disability, the transition from high school into what's next is really important. And we need to make sure that we're doing all we can to get them into a good spot.
So first, second, what Kathleen said about make sure all our kids are properly educated, because we had experience where I was in two different classes, one which was an AP level class and one that was not, distinctly not. And the guidance counselor came in and told one group that, hey, you're all going to go to college, this is how you go apply to college. And the other group said, no, you will go to college. You should go figure something out. And that's not acceptable. That person was eventually fired, but still. The thing to help our Christian students is to give them real life skills. APS, that's a bunch of math books that we just give back to Apple at bottom dollar. We should teach our kids to refurbish those laptops and sell them and learn how to do IT equipment management. We have a lot of stuff around APS that needs help, from plumbing to electrical to stuff. We can give them jobs here as apprenticeships, pay them, have them join the union, have them learn how to manage money, how to create invoices, how to talk to clients, all those life skills, and not just here's how you do one thing.
Yeah, this also goes in line with something that I've been thinking a lot about, which is issues around truancy. So I think in addition to the Career Center, which has incredible programs, truancy is a challenge affecting all the other high schools in the county. And I think the same principles need to apply there. Kids need to feel engaged and connected to come to school. Part of it is a hangover from the pandemic. And this is a national challenge where at a national level, families and kids, education is going to school is seen as less sort of mandatory, right? And this is one problem. But additionally, kids, I keep hearing it from my own, and they're young, but kids want to feel challenged and interested. They want to feel they're learning and that they can be creative. We have a diverse community, kids with diverse interests. We have a vibrant business and arts community and nonprofit sector in Arlington County. As a school board member, in my capacity of, again, governance and oversight, we don't run programs, but I think it would be important to ask those questions. I would come in to explore how can we engage these various sectors that are our neighbors and have them come into schools to motivate and interest and energize our kids, especially in high school.
Right, I'm using a remote.
Okay.
Okay. So we actually have a program for students with disabilities. It's called the PEP program. It is an amazing program that gives our students the ability to graduate with skills and be employed. We have one amazing employee with 2 locations, Jake's Ice Cream and Jake's Popcorn. Those 2 locations there specifically draw from our PEP program. As community leaders in this room, my ask of you is to create similar opportunities for our students with disabilities so they have someplace to go after they graduate from out of that PEP program. We're giving them the skills in APS. We need to do better to get them employment afterwards.
Okay. Our next question, we're going to start with Larry, and it pertains to students and the emerging drug crisis. Arlington County and surrounding school districts have experienced a spike in the number of student overdoses while on campus. What policies, procedures, and preventive methods would you enact to combat this growing crisis?
Okay, so I told you about the story of my second day last year, lockdown, and that's the joke story and the games. We have a lot of work to do, and that work has to come in coordination with the county. The principal at Wakefield and I often arrived at the same time in the morning, so we walked in together and checked. He said that one of the problems that we have is for those students that we know and have identified as having drug issues, we have no place to put them, no services that are available for residency and drug treatment. That has to get fixed with the county. The schools cannot do that by themselves. It's just too much, but we need to fix that.
So drug use is not up from before the pandemic, but it's always been a problem. We've spent $1 trillion fighting the war on drugs and have not gone anywhere. Kids are going to use drugs. My high school, you can tell where all the drug deals went down. Everyone's still using it. The problem is that fentanyl is some ingredient that they don't know is in their drugs and can cause overdoses without them realizing it. And that's a unique danger for right now. There are 2 things we can do. Arlington County gives out test strips to make sure that the drug that you're taking doesn't have fentanyl in it. It'll react if it has fentanyl in it. We need that. The second thing to do is to give our kids hope. A lot of kids have internalized that they're never going to amount to anything. And then they have nothing to lose, and they can do whatever they want because they have nothing better. And we need to change that conversation. We need to help them achieve academically and show them that they can have an effect on their lives. It takes a lot of individual attention, it takes a lot of work, but we can't just say, well, that's just who those kids are and that they're on their own. We need help.
Yeah, I know that the media has highlighted a few instances of this, but as a school board member, I'd be interested in really knowing where is this actually happening, and more importantly, what's being done afterwards, respecting FERPA, of course, and privacy requirements. But that is those questions to ask, because look, we're never going to have enough money for all the wraparound services that are needed by students and families. But that doesn't mean that we can't work to make sure that they feel connected, to their parents as well, and families. So I think we should meet families where they are, because parental involvement can take many forms. And I really think that involvement in APS should not be determinant of the child's well-being and outcome, because involvement in APS is not always an option or a choice. That does not mean that there is not parent involvement. So I think we should better understand that. And as a school board member, I work to foster a culture of community and support, foster a culture of community and support and connection. And of course, seeking more involvement by both, again, big communities and other partners in the community. Thank you.
October 2021, I saw 6 children overdose in PG County. It was on the news, it was everywhere. So the big story was it was candy laced with fentanyl. My kids love candy. And I have 2 neurodiverse kids, and I was really terrified that my kids would take candy and this was going to happen to them. So I started what every good mom does, and I started researching online to find out what resources I could find. There was nothing on social stories that would help teach kids healthy boundaries. So I contacted our friends at the parent group, help them develop the curriculum and training for parents so that parents could help work with their students and understand the neurodiverse brain and what drugs do to it, frankly. And really what we're talking about here is mental health